gives you the option to leave the meeting. So like you start recording and I could be like, no, Karen, I don't consent.
Certainly not.
That happens at my conference this week where I was like, I'm about to present and it's like, do you approve that it's recording? And I'm like, well, I guess if I don't, I'm not speaking. Is that what we're deciding? Like, I don't know. Is
just feel devoid of sound? Yeah, because we'll make our YouTube channel with just these chats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really important stuff too. So this week we watched. What?
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I feel like I should have taken some notes. I should have.
No, did you?
No, that's not how we work.
Aaron did last time, where it's like we'd almost like half forgotten what happened in the story, even though we'd only watched it like 2 days before.
But that one was a challenging one. That was.
There were many timelines, and like there were there's a repeat person in some of the timelines, and that's why it all became very convoluted.
Whereas this one was more straightforward. So this week we watched Audition.
Yeah.
1999 Japanese horror film directed by Takashi Miike, thank you. And yeah, so I think this one was an easier one to tell the story around.
I mean, I thought the story was quite clear. Yeah. I mean, there's a bit where it gets a bit like wigged out. Like,
there's a bit where you're not sure what's real towards the end of the film.
That's true.
The general premise, we start off with a dad and his kid, and the mum has just died.
Yep.
So he's like heartbroken and single parenting it. Mm-hmm. And then flash forward to 7 years down the track, and his son starts telling him that he should get remarried.
Because he's starting to look old.
Yeah, he starts to look old, definitely needs a new wife. And I love that it's not like, I do like this attitude of it's not like date or have friends or hang out, it's get married. And then it's like, I need to get a wife. Yeah. And then cue those chats with his pal that's in the film TV industry that I laughed a lot through, where they're chatting about how on earth he's going to get a new wife.
Yep.
And again, you could go down the normal route of trying to meet people and, get introduced to friends. But no, instead, let's go down the route of auditioning women under the guise that they're going to be playing a part within this dude's film. But he then gets to screen these women from this casting call. And, it was to really focus on their stories, right? That's what it was emphasized. So you've not to look too much at their pictures, because I guess that could be a lie. So really, let's look at the story, and then that can help you identify who should be in our shortlist. And how many did he have to pick in the end?
30, wasn't it 30 from 1,000?
Yeah. And then so we're starting this relationship off in a really healthy way by being dishonest about why people are doing something. But I have to say that, because I've seen this one before, but it was one that my brother tortured with me as a small child. And it really, it's what I remembered it being. And it's really, I really enjoyed it again. But yeah, problematic. I forgot, I think I'd forgotten how problematic certain bits were. But, there was the woman who he took a liking to, straight away when he read her little thing.
And it was quite a grim story to then be really invested in this woman. But yeah, so the woman had applied for the part, but said that she had previously been a ballet dancer and that was her absolute joy. Yeah. And then she had a hip injury or something, and then couldn't do ballet anymore. And then I'm probably going to get the phrasing incorrect, but it was essentially she kind of felt like her life was over.
Yeah, I think it was
when she couldn't do ballet anymore. So then I guess the worst thing had already happened to her. So
that kind of made sense though, because the gentleman in question, his wife had died at the top of the movie. So presumably he had similar feelings about life and
it's true
what that meant.
Yeah, no, that's a really good
from
point.
then on. So I mean that made sense to me.
And also, it was also to find a young woman that
was obedient.
Yeah, and also was going to be young but serious.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, no frivolity.
She should play the piano.
Oh yeah, that was it. She should play the piano. She should have. Oh no, it was a skill. That's what made me laugh so much too. She should have a skill, and then it made me go down that Napoleon Dynamite route of like
bow hunting skills, nunchuck skills. Guys only like girls that have great skills.
Yeah, like literally. Like, that's what was, I mean, perhaps Napoleon Dynamite got, like, the people who made that movie got the idea from the audition.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm conjecturing right now.
Yeah.
But sadly, we learned that her skills were not limited to ballet, because obviously, post-ballet, when you're not doing that anymore, you have to have something else to do with your time.
I was thinking it was one where it's like the end of it is so disturbing, but the build-up, we've talked about the build-up in other movies as well. It's like, it's a good, like, 45 minutes or so until you see her in the apartment with something in a sack and a phone and, like, nothing else. Like, that's the first time something, I mean, the whole, like, pretend auditions is a bit unwholesome and problematic, but, like, there's nothing that, like, really, like,
and funny.
This
like
is
the actual audition, they really play up the comedy of the audition. Like,
but then it's also
perfect, right? Like, that's what the Pitch Perfect auditions were. We had, like, some people did good things and some people were ridiculous and, like, this and this and this.
It was a fucking montage. Yeah. I mean, it was literally a montage.
Some people got their tits out. Some people were, like, I don't know, was there not someone doing majorettes at one point as well? Like, it was all a bit wild. So yeah, like you're saying, like, I think at one point I did look at how long had passed, because I was like, are we actually watching the right film? Because you'd said this was this problematic horror you'd watched that had stressed you out. And I was like, this is so unlike any horror I've watched recently. Is this actually a horror? And Dave was like, yeah, no, it's a horror, because you're getting, like, flashbacks of his wife at points. And I was like, but nothing, like, I don't feel scared yet. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then, as you say, you get to that first point where she is waiting for him to phone her, because, there was no point in them even having the audition, because he'd already decided that this was the woman for him. And then as soon as he met her, it was like, yep, definitely. And then you get to that scene where she's, like, waiting for him to call, and she's looking at her phone. And then there's that bag at the side. And I'm like, oh, scary sack. It's a scary sack.
Like, why is there a big sack, and why is she, like, weirdly just, like, sitting on the ground staring at the floor, like, with a phone near the sack, like,
and then the sack moves and I lost my shit a little bit. Like, I was just like, okay, this is
when you know you're in trouble, when that sack, that giant person-sized sack moves. I just it was everything that I'm moving. I don't know, if this is okay, this is just like spoilers now.
I think we're going to make an assumption that people will watch this if they want to hear us chat about it. So
once we turn this into a professional video for online, at the stage that I say there's a person in the sack, like 5 seconds, the thing being like, spoiler, pause now and go watch the movie if you haven't already, because obviously this is going to be a very popular YouTube series.
Oh, absolutely, highly entertaining. So he gets warned by his pal, though, that he shouldn't, like, get too caught up in her.
He was like, she's creepy, basically.
Because he's like, and I've contacted her references and they don't exist, like,
or none of them exist. No, like,
they don't exist, or they've gone missing. And then he goes to the bar and the bar is closed. So basically they have this moment where they go away together and they're having a lovely time, and she's like, say, love me and only me, and it's implied that they have the sex. But then he wakes up and he has this fucking extended fucking nightmare sequence that you're not sure is a nightmare sequence for a long time, which is horrendous. And I'm struggling to put it, because there's two big nightmare sequences. There's this one, and then there's one where he comes back to his house and he just collapses, and then he has another one, and you're really not sure what's real.
Exactly.
Are they intermingled? Does he wake up in the bed after he collapses in the...
No, so the first bit that happens is, so he first wakes up and she's gone. So when the nightmare starts, as he wakes up in that bed, is really happy with her. He'd been planning on proposing to her. He'd already said to his son, you're going to meet this woman that I'm going to marry. And then he wakes up and she's gone, and he realizes that he doesn't have her address. Because the only time they've gone out for dinner and they drop her off in a taxi near where she lives.
Yeah, it's kind of like, this is fine, let me out here, as opposed
and
to...
she's not answering the phone, so he can't reach her. And then he goes to his friend and says, like, I need to find her. Like, I don't know what's going on. Is there any way you can find her? And he's like, well, no, like, the references don't exist. I don't have any other means of contacting her. And that's when he goes to the bar, because it occurs to him that when they had dinner, she'd mentioned where she'd been working. So he's like, right, okay, I'll go there because maybe I can find her there working.
The fish, the stone fish or the ghost fish or something?
It's a something fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because they remark how, like, it's a funny name for a bar. So he remembers about, and then he goes and it's like...
And he goes, and then it's all shut, and he's about to leave, and there's a guy...
Just a stranger.
A strange man.
Just a stranger saying, are you looking for the bar that's downstairs in a basement inexplicably?
Yeah, it's not closed, and the guy who ran it is like, is he dead or missing?
He's murdered.
He's murdered there.
He's murdered. Because again, like, some scary things have happened, but nothing too scary. And then while he's chatting to this dude, he gets a flash image of, because apparently the person's tongue was cut out.
Yeah.
And so you get this creepy flash to a moving tongue on,
and there's like fingers, and so it was a couple of fingers.
Tongue and fingers, you're right.
No, because they say they found extra fingers.
They found extra fingers and an extra tongue, and then was there I feel like there was a third body part that maybe not. I can't remember. Anyway, extra body parts at the murder scene, which is suspicious to say the least.
Yeah. So then he goes to the ballet school where she supposedly went.
Oh my God.
And finds this guy playing the piano.
Yeah.
And then there's a flashback there's this flashback to her youth where he's got these
like red hot like pieces of wiring, like stiff wire metal.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. Piano wire, maybe.
It was really thick. I mean, I don't know how thick.
I don't know what they were.
Yeah.
But he burns her, and she's a very young girl. And and he burns her on the inside of her leg, and it's very like arresting and confronting.
Really problematic, and also just his face. Like he just looks crazy and manic and just like but like a caricature of it. Like it was weird.
Yeah. And he kind of dispenses some warning to him about, oh, have you touched her? Do you love her?
Yeah. It was getting real creepy. And also he had he didn't have any feet.
Yeah.
He didn't have any feet, that's right, yeah.
Important to note.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
is that her uncle or something?
I thought that was the stepdad.
Okay, that's the stepdad.
Because she'd had a very difficult upbringing where she'd felt unloved and unwanted, but had ended up going back to, I guess, her mum and her stepdad.
That's right.
And you get all these scenes of her as a little girl doing her ballet and really getting into it, but he is playing piano while she's doing the ballet and then punishing her. And it's all very, very disturbing. So then he goes from there. Yeah. But how does he find her, or is it she finds him? Yeah. Is that when it gets to the really graphic, horrendous stuff? Because you're right, because of the dream sequences.
I can't remember what happened.
Is it then that he goes home and he collapses backwards?
I think so. Yes, that's it. Because he goes home and does he not have a drink of something or whatever?
Yeah.
Because she'd been in the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
She'd been in the house and saw the picture of the dead wife.
Yes.
And then like drugged his scotch. And then he's having a drink of his scotch. And then, so then he fucking kills over.
Yeah. So then we have this disturbing scene, which we're going to talk about extensively. But it's after we have that whole mess that he wakes up in the bed and she's like, yeah, I will marry you.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're all like,
what?
Yeah.
What the hell's going on?
Yeah, that's right.
But then it flicks back to the scene we skipped over.
Yeah, so it goes back to that. So he keels over, and before he ostensibly wakes up again, she kind of puts him on the ground and takes his shirt off and says, you said you would love only me, but you didn't because you love your son. And then she says some things like, only when you're in pain do you know who you really are. She takes some what look like giant acupuncture needles and starts sticking them in his stomach. Quite a lot of them.
Like
and she sticks them really, really deep, and she's making this horrible sound while she does it.
Oh yeah.
Which seems to mean deeper. Does anyone want to do the sound?
I can't do the sound. I actually, you have to tell this whole part because I now feel myself scrunching entirely because, yeah.
So she puts maybe like 12 of these things in his stomach, and then she like moves up and basically sits on them, and he's just in agonizing pain. And then she puts 4 in the soft skin under his eyes.
That's the bit that I could, but then they're there for the rest of the movie. So every time you're like, anything's happening and he's doing, because imagine like, you know, when something hurts you, you go like, oh, and then what you do is squeeze your eyes shut. But now you have needles sticking, and they have long.
And then we have this moment where she gets off him and she puts a tourniquet on his foot and gets some kind of wire. It looks like piano wire or some kind of...
And just fucking saws his foot off.
Saws his foot off,
just
right off.
Like this, but it's cutting through the foot.
And it's like, in that point in the movie, I'm kind of like, this is about to happen. This is when the son comes home.
But I have a question for you because, again, the chronology of this, because there was also a scene somewhere flicking about where she supposedly cuts that dude's head off.
Yeah.
So the stepdad in the wheelchair with the no feet. So as soon as because that must have happened before, because as soon as you see that wire, you're like, something's getting cut off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was a scene where, and that's right. And he's actually, isn't he just still like sitting at the piano in his wheelchair, and she just comes up and just
comes up and saws his fucking head off.
Yeah,
that's right. So she saws his foot off, and while she's doing that, I think so that the directors or the writers or whomever, they want you to know that they know that this is torture porn. So there's quite literally a shot of the guy who plays the piano jacking off while the foot is being sawn off.
Yeah.
Just to really ram it home, just to say, yeah, we know.
We did it on purpose, guys.
We know what we're doing.
Our thing like a little bit.
Yeah. So the foot's off, and she's going to do the other one.
Yeah.
And son comes home. Son comes home.
He's like, what's going on?
Reasonably, like, what's happened? Like, what's going on?
But she'd run away.
Yeah, because she sneaks up behind him, right? Because he comes in and his dad's on the floor out of foot and needles in his eyes and just being like, yo, this is not the way I left this house.
And she's got this spray bottle thing, which has presumably got some kind of sedative in it.
Yeah.
And she tries to spray him, and he's
like, what? I'm like backing away, and she's just like coming at him with the spray.
Yeah. So he runs up the stairs, horror movie style, falls over at the top of the stairs, and she's spraying this shit in his face. And just when you think she's gonna win, he fucking gives her a jolly good kick, and she goes
down,
flying. Like, she doesn't like tumble. She like flying backwards and lands at the bottom of the
stairs.
Then
the crack and the image of her too, because it's the bone, the neck.
Yeah,
shot.
Or something, and then you just the neck bone like go.
Oh, it's horrid.
Yeah,
it's horrid.
But wait, we've skipped over something, because so there's the foot comes off.
Yeah. And
all that's happened, and then there's a moment where he wakes up in the bed next to her, and then that's when she's like, I've decided to accept your proposal. And there's this fucking horrible moment of like, imagine you were that in love with someone, and then you had this nightmare about them.
And like, could you actually marry
Could you actually go on and marry that person?
That was horrendous.
And then it flips back.
Saying no very aggressively right now.
Yeah. And then it flips back, and then it's kind of, because you kind of don't know what's real, and then it flips back to the torturous scene, and you're kind of like, okay, this is the reality.
Yeah.
And it kind of stops with them kind of looking at each other on the floor while the son calls the police.
And then she keeps saying stuff that she was saying on like one of the dates about what was she saying? It was like, I was really excited when you called, like I didn't think you were gonna call, like
I didn't think you were gonna call, and
I can't stop smiling.
But I think what's interesting too, so I think we've gone through the pair of them and everything like that was going on with them and how confusing that was, but interspersed with that, there were all these other women in that guy's life, and you weren't really sure what was going on with them. So you kept getting flashbacks to his wife, and when he was drugged, like he went into this mode where it was like, you need to get out of this. Like it was his dead wife was warning him that he was going to be in trouble. Yeah. There was also the housekeeper.
Yeah.
Who, I don't know, there was something weird there.
It's implied
too, like,
it was implied that she would quite like to be his wife.
Yeah.
And then there was also the woman, the office worker, the secretary, that did they also have a thing, and then he'd shunned her?
Well,
so there's also
definitely wanted to, right? Because she was like, I'm gonna get like I'm getting married like soon or now, and he's like, oh, like who to? And she's like, oh, like someone you don't know. And it was this weird thing when like, look, I need to get married, like I'm gonna be off the market soon, like yo buddy, like what? Yeah, it was like the weird. So
yeah. I'm gonna get married, so what you gonna do about it?
And then the other, because this whole relationship with all these women, because then it was also the girl that his son fancied as well.
Yeah,
there's this bit as well where he's having
weird hallucination-y flashback, the whatever, and she's trying to do things to his bits.
Junks.
Yeah, so it's very confusing. So again, that's all part of who in all of these women has he had a thing with, if any of them, and has he behaved badly at any point to, like, say, for example, the secretary. And I mean, there always was a bit of a creepy bit about this film anyway, just about, I mean, maybe it's not creepy, maybe it's just my perception of being creepy, but like his dad kind of applauding his son for finding a good looking filly. So I don't know, like that whole scene was just so disturbing because.
And this bit, like, cause you know, it's like the girl that the son had met was trying to do things to him, and he got up and like kicked her, but then like when he trips over her, it's actually the bag with the person in it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Like drinks from a dog eat. No, there's a bit where the woman makes herself vomit into the thing,
bowl,
and then puts the bowl, and then he goes over and he like laps. Oh, nah.
So you're right. So that's the thing. It's like towards the end, everything gets so confusing that you have no idea what's real, what's being hallucination, and you do end up. The dude with his stuff in his eyes is in her apartment with the man in the bag who comes out of the bag, who's had his tongue cut out and fingers cut off. So that's clearly what was found in the pub.
Was it the feet? Because he didn't have feet. Because that's where the feet comes in.
Yeah, he had no feet.
He had no feet. So maybe it was that the other spare part that they found at the pub?
Maybe.
Spare part. Anyway, but yeah, he's
got
no feet. And then you got that.
And you're right. It was like she threw up and then was making this dude from the bag lap up the vomit, which also I just like.
He also like seemed kind of not, I don't say okay with it, but there was like obviously like this is how he gets nourishment. Like,
presumably he wasn't lapping it up.
That's a very good point. There was no tongue with which to lap.
I was like, Dave, I don't understand what you're saying. How? And I was like, oh.
It was a slurp.
Yeah, it was a slurp or perhaps a gulp.
Yeah.
Just to really aerate it.
And then, so it turns away from that though, but it's not the women anymore. I think that's when it turns back to his housekeeper or his secretary, or I don't know. But anyway, that was all so confusing. And then you're flipping.
Little girl, her was also in that sequence as well.
Yeah, that's right.
It was in front of the bag, maybe.
Yeah.
I thought there's a bit where she's like kneeling down.
I feel like it flips back and forth at that point.
Yeah.
It also happens. There's an image of it near the start of the movie. You know, there's a bit where there's this thing on the radio about the heroine, but the heroine is you. And then there's a shot of a little girl in front of the radio, and then later on you see it's like the same radio, and it's clearly her. So you see her as a kid all through the film, and sometimes in the same scene, and it just flips, and then it flips back, and nothing is really made of it.
I feel like the bit that I remember like the most from seeing it the first time was like I actually forgot about the whole like jumping between the stuff, confusing ending. But it was just that guy coming out of the bag without his fingers or his tongue or his feet. Like that is imprinted in like 12-year-old Sophie's brain.
Imagine.
I don't think that's a movie my brother should have showed me at that age. Quietly.
And the other thing that I got from the start of the film, I kept saying to Dave, something's going to happen to that dog, that poor dog, because it kept appearing all the time, and it was really happy, and it was kind of getting in the way, but it was really happy, and it was clearly such a feature in that family too. And I'm like, Dave, that dog's going to die. It's going to die.
Yeah.
And then, and
that's, he loves it.
Yeah, because he loves it. So basically, yeah, he's not allowed to love anything else. So yeah, so thanks for this one, Sophie. This was
You're welcome. At least this was like, I feel like it held up though. It's not like my previous ones of like, I saw this as a kid and like, I wonder if it's still good. And it turns out the answer is very much no. And I apologize. I really like, I'm gonna say I enjoyed watching this again. I'm glad I did. It was as good as I remember it, but also it definitely broke the 1.5 hour rule, right?
That was like, so that was my other issue. It was over 2 hours or almost 2 hours, one of the two. But like,
I don't think it dragged though.
Look, I don't think it needed anything changed from it, but it was like such a slow build,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think you sort of almost don't. I feel like the beginning almost went like quicker than the exciting stuff at the end seemed to take longer. But then I guess because that was just like, it was really traumatic, so it just seemed to go for a long time when it actually didn't. And you had, as I said, like, you know, was it 45 minutes of like literally nothing? I feel like up till then it didn't feel like the movie had been going for 45 minutes, and then you've got this. But yeah, it had to be 2 hours because otherwise there wouldn't be enough time for all of the very drawn out, horrific shit that they had to put into it.
Yeah. And there's also, once it gets to kind of the middle bit of the film, it gets quite tense. And I think that's what the length gives you. Like Alien is the same. Like Alien, it's truckers in space for like an hour.
Yeah.
Or anything happens. Like it's just building tension and waiting for something to happen. And then there's these, sorry?
I was gonna say, I think we made, the one that we watched in the past, I remember us making specific comment about was also The Exorcist.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really innocuous for a long time, and then stuff starts happening that starts off slowly, and then it's just like, this is a completely different movie to the one we were watching like half an hour ago. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I sort of like that because I think, you know, there's a lot of, you know, I've been watching a lot of like trashy Netflix horror and stuff recently, and some of them just get into it. Like the movie has been going for literally like 2 minutes and then awful shit starts happening. And it's just like, I feel like there's something about that building tension where you're like, you know, why do we keep seeing the dog? Like, okay, what's that bag in the phone? And like, oh no, it's fine. And like, you know, it's this, and then
it means it has room for things like the comedy montage without it being a comedy horror film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a film that has a funny bit in it and one of the more memorable horror sequences in it. Also, like the whole like chopping the foot off, it's just so well done. Like it looked, I don't want to say great, but it was just convincing. It was just so well done and so crushing. Like it was just great. It was so well done.
Yeah, that's it. Like I can't say, like, I mean, I liked it, if that's the right word. I don't know, like, it wasn't like any of the other horrors we've been watching lately. It was very different, and I wasn't quite sure where it was going, which I quite liked because so much stuff is made that's so samey.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would recommend it to other people, just because maybe I don't do very well with gore horror. I realized that maybe that's my limit, Sophie. You know, we've been working out that you're not like into the comedy stuff really, and like the silly decision stuff. I think someone graphically getting their foot cut off, I think is maybe my limit.
It's like interesting because I was like, I wanted to like, I say rewatch all the Saw movies. I realized I only ever seen like the first one a really long time ago because I wanted to watch them all and then go see Spiral at the movie. Turns out there's at the cinemas. There's like 8 Saw movies.
Yeah.
And I feel like the gore in this, to me, it was gory and like revolting, but I think well-placed gore I have less of a problem with, whereas like I think Saw, like the first movie was like interesting because it was like new.
Yeah, I think I've seen the first one, but yeah.
And then I think it was this weird thing where the second one was trash and the third one almost like rectified, and then I think we like just stopped watching them. But it gets to the point where like this is just being gross for the sake of being gross, and like that, like gore for the sake of gore, I do not enjoy in a movie. Whereas I think even this one, like even though it was like pretty disturbing and horrific, like I think it was still well placed enough for me that it didn't make me go like, oh, I'm not going to recommend this to someone. But yeah, like if one day I'll watch the other Saw movies, but you get to the point where you're like, this is just fun. They're just thinking of the horrible things you can do to people now. Like there was I don't know if you ever watched it, I think they took it off Netflix, but it had the girl who was in Hairspray, like the blonde one in it, and it's like a Would You Rather, you know that game, like Would You Rather, like eat a box of matches and sit in a something, or like fight a shark blindfolded or whatever. But it was this rich millionaire who had like a dinner party, and it was all these people who like needed money, and he's like, we're going to play a game of like would you rather, and if like you win the game, you like win this money that you very desperately need to save like your brother dying of cancer, or this. And it was this thing where it's like, would you rather I cut that person's finger off, or like I repeatedly like beat you in the head with a mallet, you know, but like it gets worse and worse. So it's this thing where it's like, would you rather me do this awful stuff to another person or you? And so it's just a game. It's like, sorry, just game. It's a movie where they've gone like, let's be as revolting as humanly possible, and just like torture people and have people doing horrible things to other people. And I'm seeing it being like, this is the dumbest premise ever. This is like the dumbest story ever, and this is just gross. Whereas like the gore in this one, I don't want to say I enjoyed it, because I didn't. I was sitting there going like, oh, I mean, this is just my face for like a good 45 minutes was this. I just did that the whole
Whereas
time.
mine was like this.
Like, but
I feel like this movie had something to say, but I'm not quite sure what it was.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it stayed with me, and you know, we watch so much horror, and usually it doesn't really affect me. I've had nightmares every night this week since we watched it.
Sorry.
And it's a bit wild for me.
Well, I won't pick the next one for a while then, because this is
no, but like I hadn't even heard of this one, so like I wouldn't have come across it without your recommendation. So like
from my brother from the past.
So like maybe we'll have to mull over this one and actually work out if there was a message that
I think there was a message. I think it definitely has something to say about how men see women.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Yeah.
I think if I had to compare it to a movie, I think the most obvious one that I can think of to compare it to is Midsommar. And I greatly enjoyed this movie so much more than I enjoyed.
You be careful with that comparison.
Yeah, I know where you go
about Midsommar. No,
I much preferred this film.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this one felt like there was a lot of subtext and subplot, because it was based so heavily on a book, and I suspect it was very faithful to the book, because they preserved a lot of that.
Yeah. And
even the fact that we're talking about what the subtext may or may not be speaks to that, I think. Whereas Midsommar, I think there was a bunch of visual stuff in there just to be talked about.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty and interesting to look at. And
yeah.
And I think with it too, I don't know about you two with this, but I felt quite conflicted at the end when she was, you know, sawing off his foot and doing the bad things, because part of me still, like, I didn't dislike her though. I mean, like, it's weird, but I think it's just because you saw so much crap that had happened to her. And then part of me was like, oh, well, it's a shame that this poor dude who lost his wife 7 years ago has accidentally stumbled upon this woman who's clearly quite unwell. Yeah. But then I think I then started to get really conflicted because of all of the flashbacks to him with these other women. And I was like, not that anyone deserves this, but I was like, oh, maybe he's not as perfect. And certainly, like, well, also he's talked about women all the way through it. And I've not really enjoyed. But so it was quite a difficult one, because I thought of him as a sympathetic character, but that was really only because his wife died, because every other way that he was presenting himself, I found him harder to connect with.
He was quite likable though. Like, he was clearly like a good father, and he clearly loved his son and loved his dog.
But like, I think that it was some of the lines, and I guess maybe it's just because, again, it was made quite a while ago now, but like scoffing at some of the things that were said. I mean, you remember me laughing when he's chatting to his pal, and every other, like the things about the skills and what he's looking for and the getting married. But then, you know, he seemed like quite a traditionalist in that I don't want to date, I want this, but I don't want an arranged marriage, I just want this.
There's also maybe, like, I don't want to defend the point of view, but like, the best I could do in terms of giving the benefit of the doubt is that it was the late 90s given, but it's also in Japan, and I don't know if there's maybe a cultural reason why, like, maybe it is difficult to meet people when you're that age, or what the culture. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying I don't know if that is the case.
I mean, maybe he's like a sympathetic character in the same way that she is, right? Like, so as you said,
no, you're right. No,
they both have these things where you're like, okay, this awful stuff has happened to you. There are good things about you, sort of, obviously, and then there's also terrible things, and it's that thing where like they're both yeah, I don't know, because it's like if she's dying, you're a bit like, oh, like I didn't hate her as a character, and you're saying like with him the same, like you don't hate him as a character.
No, and let's face it, like I'm saying, he said weird things that I didn't really like, but yeah, he didn't deserve to be stabbed and have his foot cut off or any of that stuff.
So is the point of the movie that love is a pure justification for behavior?
Maybe.
Because he behaves problematically, but he's clearly quite fucking smitten with her.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And she obviously behaves problematically in a different way towards the end, but then justifies it because, well, presumably, I don't even know if she loves him, but she kind of calls him on his bullshit. Like, if you said you'd love me and you'd only love me.
Yeah, it's anyway.
It doesn't seem as straightforward as revenge.
No,
you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good movie.
So Audition, well done. So Dave's
Audition, I think.
I've got our spreadsheet up. I think it's surely Dave's turn to choose one with his very short list. But you can choose from our list too. But anything you particularly fancy for next time?
What do we got here? To watch. Oh, that means that I should. Oh, okay, let me get rid of Audition then. Delete, cell, shift up. Okay. Am I still putting them in this thing for you to?
Yeah. So I put it in the watch list, and I need to write my wee comment. But yeah. So Dave,
what do you want to watch, Dave?
I've still got a real hankering to rewatch Return to Oz. I don't know if it's a horror film, but it falls into that category of film that's like, seems like it should be a kid's film, but it's probably way too scary for kids.
Yeah, I'm happy to watch, like, again, because I reckon I have seen it, but so long ago that I just remember it like is pretty creepy, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Got no specifics in my head at all from it. So I'm like,
and I've not seen it at all, so this is completely new to me.
Cool, let's watch it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Great.
Done like a chicken dinner.
And I don't want to watch Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 because I know that Sophie won't actually like them.
Oh, but the first one's actually more of a straightforward horror.
Yeah, that would be an interesting compare and contrast.
I have seen Evil Dead and Evil Dead. I think these are ones that like I just watched with Seb at some stage as well. Like I think I have actually seen them.
Yeah.
Look, I can.
You like the first one and not like the second one?
I don't remember. Again, like so, I started watching these horrible things like as a small child because my brother is an irresponsible brother. So it's just like a lot of them I just don't have any. It's like I know I've seen it because I remember sitting down and watching it, but I have no recollection. Whereas interestingly, like Audition is one where specific. So like it was the same thing with like Jew on the Curse, right? The first one. Like there are specifics that have just stayed in my head, and like one of those things is like the kid meowing like a cat and the woman coming down the stairs and the baby in the sack, and it's just like, yeah. And then for like Audition, it was the guy coming out of the sack as well. Lots of sacks, but yeah, but yeah, like I'm happy to watch them in the future.
But we'll do a Return to Oz and then see how we go.